G'day, I'm Paul. So people are desperate for SUVs, but they're also desperate for EV SUVs. And one of the ones that I think has come up sort of left of field is this. It's the Genesis Electrified GV70. So we have reviewed the GV70 before, but this is the full electric version of it. Now this competes with things like, I guess, the BMW iX3, the Mercedes-Benz EQC and the Audi e-tron. We don't have pricing for this just yet for Australia, but we're thinking it'll be around that $110,000 mark, so it'll be quite a premium proposition. Now today we're going to do a quick drive of the electrified GV70 before it goes on sale in Australia later on this year, so it'll be our first sampler. If you do want to skip ahead to other parts of this quick drive, you can use the time codes on the screen, or if you're on YouTube, you can scroll down and use the chapters below. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon, because that's going to tell you every single time we publish a review of an EV. Now, before we kick off this design section, I just want to mention that this is a pre-production car. So if you do see some weird things on here, and there are a couple of odd ones I will point out, don't take it to heart, they're still working on it. In terms of your color palette, this is available in 9 standard colors and 4 matte colors. And this is one of the matte colors. I'm a huge fan of this. It looks fantastic in the sun here, and I think it really sets apart the GV70 from other cars on the road. Now have a look down the front here. This is unique to the EV. It's basically a closed off grille. It looks similar to the internal combustion version of the GV70, but it's obviously different with these closed off sections. This is also where you'll find the charger, and I'll run you through that in a little bit more detail later on. Radar down the bottom here as well, and then that Genesis logo up the top. In terms of your headlights, it's a full LED headlight package with a matrix LED function. Then in addition to that, you also have LED indicators and a daytime running light built into their signature design here with that twin stripe setup that's common across other Genesis products, and I think that looks really cool. Now, around the side here, you've got a set of 20-inch alloy wheels. I like this design. It's kind of like a brushed aluminium look, and I think it really sets this apart nicely. Big set of stoppers there as well. Even though this does have all your regen braking and the I-pedal setup that will bring it to a full stop, it still does need friction brakes every now and then, and that's what that setup is there for. Decent profile on that tyre too. So I'll run through this in a bit more detail when we go for a drive, but this vehicle has had a damper selection specifically for Australia. So instead of tuning in Australia, they're now going to the markets that Genesis vehicles are sold and then picking the products that will suit best for the Australian market. Just above the wheel there, you've got body-coloured wheel arch guards, I guess you could call them there. So thankfully they haven't gone for that big old plastic setup. Up the top here, you've got an indicator built into that wing mirror with a piano black section down the bottom, plus a camera built into there as well. You've got this garnish element down the bottom, which is kind of a reflective element and blends in well with that matte color. Privacy glass, you've got a full panoramic roof rails, and then come around to the back. Now this is probably my favorite part of the GV70. It just looks sensational. So you've got these LED strip lights along the rear. You've also got a brake light integrated into here. It is the thinnest LED strip I've ever seen. That's great. You've got a shark fin aerial up the top there. This is where they hide the button for the boot release. Genesis badging there, worn pretty proudly. Now you will notice as well, different to the standard GV70, which has exhaust pipes here on either side, depending on whether you go for the sport model or the luxury. This is just a very clean setup. Obviously no exhaust pipe. I do like how they've kept a similar design there that you would normally see on an internal combustion car, but they've gone ahead and removed all the exhausts and the stuff that obviously doesn't relate to EVs. So let me know what you reckon in the comments section below. Do you think the GV70 is a decent looker? Or do you think they should have gone down the path of, Mercedes-Benz with the EQC, where they try and make the EV version of their vehicles look completely different? So we are sitting inside the GV70, or the electrified GV70. This is what the key looks like. You've got lock, unlock, boot, you've got the auto parking feature, and then a push to start. On the back there, you've got the Genesis logo and this sort of grippy material on it. Proximity sensing key, so you leave that in your pocket. Once you're inside, you have a button here to switch everything on. Now, it is worth keeping in mind, this also has a fingerprint sensor, so it'll recall all of your settings when you get inside the car, which I think is pretty cool. Now, does this look familiar to you? Well, it should, because it looks virtually the exact same as the standard GV70. A couple of exceptions are the boost button here on the steering wheel, but for the most part, everything here looks just like it does in the GV70. Now, I actually think that's a good thing, because it means if you are familiar with GV70, you like the luxury elements of it, you're getting the exact same thing here without any sort of funky EV treatment. So big plus there. Now, with the GV70, that means all of your materials really just feel high-end and premium. So you've got all this soft touch stuff along the dashboard there, that exposed stitching. I like these sort of brushed aluminium segments along there. It really is just a very premium looking interior. Now, normally this is where we would do our build quality and our durometer test, but because this is pre-production, I'm not going to bother with any of that. Now, moving on to infotainment. So you get a 14.5-inch infotainment screen. I love the look of this. It is big, wide. It just really sits prominently atop the dashboard there. It's very high resolution as well. It's both a touch screen and also can be controlled using this. I don't hate this, but I also don't love it because you sometimes get it confused for the gear stick or the gear selector, so it is a little bit confusing there, but for the most part that's fine. This is all pretty straightforward. The only change here you'll see from a standard GV70 is the EV menu. So that's where you'll find the ability to activate vehicle to load, schedule charging, and just see how much charge you have left. I will point out as well that you're getting a killer stereo, 16-speaker Lexicon branded stereo. It is excellent in this car. In addition to that, you have AM, FM, and DAB plus digital radio. Smartphone mirroring comes in the form of Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Both of those are wired as well, so no wireless, unfortunately. Now, this is a pre-production car, but ahead of the driver in the production car, you're actually going to get that full screen there with the 3D elements as well, like we've seen in other GV70 models. Let's talk about safety tech. So this is loaded with pretty much everything you need. You have AEB that detects both pedestrians and cyclists. You've got an auto dimming rear vision mirror. You've got a junction assistant, rear cross traffic alert, a lane departure warning and a lane keeping assistant, semi-autonomous steering function, radar cruise control, blind spot monitor, but for the vehicle that will come to Australia, you'll get the camera integrated into that display ahead of the driver as well, so that'll make it easier to see things that are either side of you. You've also got a safe exit assistant, so you don't accidentally open the door into traffic, an active bonnet, and finally you have both front and rear parking sensors with a 360 camera. I'll show you what that looks like. There it is there. That's really high quality, nice and detailed. Then in addition to that, you can change the views as required and also do a swivel around view as well, which I think is it's nice and fun. Let's talk about your connectivity options. So in here, you've got two USB-A ports, a Qi wireless phone charger. In here, you'll find a 12-volt outlet. Plenty of places to store things as well, so your phone can live in there. You've got these two cup holders here with teeth built into them. You've got generous door bins as well, plus plenty of storage here in the center. You have a decent sized glove box as well. It doesn't feel like they've really compromised anything here. I mean, you're even getting a sunglasses holder too, so plenty of places to store your odds and ends. And then your comfort features, so dual zone automatic climate control, heated and cooled seats for the front here. I love the seat design. These are very comfortable to sit in. So you've got that diamond quilted pattern there, Napa leather seats. In addition to these both being fully electrically adjustable, they have this feature called Ergo Comfort, and they both have these air cells built into the seats that can inflate and give you a massage while you're driving. So pretty impressive technology set up there, and I like the way they've done that. Steering wheel is electrically adjustable and offers both tilt and reach adjustment. And then on our reach test, all of this stuff is easy to reach, but if you do want to use this as a touchscreen, you really do have to move forward for that. So second row of the GV70. Let's talk about leg room first. So knee room is okay. Toe room is reasonable. Headroom is pretty good. Yeah, my driver's seat is pretty far back, so you can see how much room I have available there. I wish this was just a tiny bit more, it just needs a little bit more space, but anyway. In terms of your other creature comforts, down here you have a third zone of climate control, seat heating for the two outboard seats. Beneath here you've got two USB-A ports, you've got mat pockets in here. You have the ability to move the passenger seat forwards and backwards using these walk-in controls, that's what they call them. Look at that, pretty much a flat floor down the bottom here, which is great to see. Center armrest with two cup holders. These seats actually recline, so you can move them backwards and forwards if you need to. You've got storage inside the doors for a bottle. You've also got this window shade here for a little bit of extra privacy. ISOFIX points on the two outboard seats and top tether points as well. Finally, our window test. Do you go all the way down? Yes, yes, yes. Oh, just stopped right there, but auto up and down, which is good to see. Now, what about your cargo space? So I mentioned earlier, you press this button to open the boot, power tailgate. You have a little under 550 litres of cargo space here, so not a huge compromise with all of the electric components. Beneath the cargo floor, you have storage for the cargo blind, odds and ends, including your charging equipment. What I love over here is this is where one of your V2L ports is, so you can get up to 3.6 kilowatts, 16 amps out of that, which is great. 12-volt outlet, a little bit of storage off to the sides. I'll show you what it looks like with our Pelican in there. Quack, quack. That's a sound pelicans make. You can then increase the space in here by dropping your second row, and that pretty much creates a flat floor and expands the space to just under 1,700 litres. Now, before we go for a drive, I want to run you through charging. So I mentioned in the intro, this is where the charger is. It's kind of cleverly hidden behind there. I love the fact that this is at the front of the car, and I prefer it to either be at the front or the back, one or the other, but not on the side. It really is hard to reach some of those side chargers when you're trying to do DC charging. You need to drape cables over the car. Not good for your paintwork. So here you have beneath the skin an 80-ish kilowatt hour battery, a little bit less than that, but the charging capacity here is excellent. So you have AC and DC charging. AC charging 3-phase up to 11 kilowatts, which is pretty much as fast as you need for a 3-phase setup. Then down the bottom you have DC charging. Now this is capable of running at 800 volts and also up to 350 kilowatts. If this is like the Ioniq 5, it'll hit that 230 kilowatt marker without any dramas at all. So this is some excellent charging technology. Now, in addition to that, you also have a charging indicator here and the ability to do vehicle to load, and that means you can use the car's battery to run other devices, and you can do that at up to 3.6 kilowatts, which is really impressive. So we've just hit the road in the electrified GV70. Now, under the bonnet here, it's interesting. So they've basically just taken the internal combustion engine out entirely and swapped it all out with EV components and the battery. So they used 2 electric motors, one for the front axle, one for the rear axle. Now, in boost mode, they can produce up to 180 kilowatts on the front axle and 180 kilowatts on the rear axle. And that gives you a combined output of 360 kilowatts in boost mode, which is pretty impressive. And that equates to a torque output of 700 Newton meters. So that is a really big, meaty amount that's going to put a big smile on your face when you do slam the throttle down. Now, speaking of slamming the throttle down, does it do all the fancy EV stuff? So I'll put it in boost mode. Yes. Yes, it absolutely does. That is all fine. So big tick there for, face-bending EV stuff. Now, in terms of low-speed driving, Hyundai's developed a system called iPedal. And the way that it works is you have 3 levels of regen that you can control here on the steering wheel. It goes all the way from 0, which you can see up there, which is just strictly a coasting mode, down to level 1, 2, and 3. And finally, you have iPedal. Now, with iPedal, it brings the car to a complete stop, just like it does in the Tesla Model 3 or the Nissan Leaf. They kind of pioneered that technology. And it tends to work pretty well. The iPedal system will recognize when you need to slow down a little bit quicker, and then you can modulate the throttle pedal to bring it down faster or to just maintain a bit of speed before it does come to a full stop. Interestingly though, unlike a Tesla Model 3, when you do come to a full stop here, it kind of bounces on the spot a little bit. It doesn't feel like it applies the brakes, and it can be a little unnerving if you are on a hill because it kind of feels like it's rocking. So a little curious thing there to just keep an eye out. And then also on that boost mode, it can run in boost mode for up to 10 seconds, but you can just keep reapplying it every single time. I don't know why they don't just make boost mode, full throttle or something like that. But yeah, I guess this is their performance setting, if you want to call it that. What you'll notice here ahead of the driver is something slightly different to the internal combustion car. Over on the right hand side, you've got a charge window. So if I roll out of the throttle, you can see it goes into charge mode, and then the harder I push the throttle, it then eventually goes into that power mode, and then also eventually into the boost mode when you do activate the boost mode here on the steering wheel. Then down on the bottom left, you have your battery gauge. Looks just like a fuel gauge, tells you what battery state you're in, and then you can go through your trip computer to see how much range you have left as well. We don't know what the exact driving figure is going to be for Australia, but Genesis quotes in overseas markets for around 450 plus kilometres for this, depending on the cycle that it's tested on. That's pretty reasonable. If you look at the rest of the cars in this segment, that's about where you want to be in terms of the charging speed and how much travel you're able to get out of a full charge. And in terms of that full charge, you've got both AC and DC charging, so it is able to charge nice and quickly. If you were to go to, well, one of the fastest chargers you can find, 10 to 80% is only going to take around that sort of 25-minute mark, which I think is pretty impressive. And that's about the limit where most people are willing to wait for their car to charge. Now, what's the ride like at low speeds? It's actually really impressive. So this uses an adaptive damping setup, and in addition to that, it uses a camera up here to read the road surface ahead, and it can then tailor how the car feels as it rides on different surfaces. I will caveat this by saying we're on a private track at the moment, and it's all pretty smooth. In the past though, when we have driven the GV70 and when we reviewed the V6, and you can click up here to watch that review, the ride was actually fantastic despite the fact it had pretty big wheels and low profile tyres. Unlike Hyundais of previous and Kia today, they're not doing any local ride and handling tuning on these cars. They're simply taking damper settings from other markets and then adapting them for the Australian market. So there isn't really a great deal of local tuning, but at least there is some attention paid to how this car rides on Australian roads. Let's talk drive modes. So you've got a switch here that allows you to go between drive and terrain modes. So if you do flick it to terrain, you've got some off-road modes there to choose from. Look, you're not going to be doing any off-road driving in this car. This is predominantly a city car, but if you do go to a campsite or something fun like that, you can change between those settings. And then in terms of drive modes, you have Eco, Comfort, Sport, and My Mode. So Comfort is just obviously the comfort setting, but if you do flick it over to Sport mode, everything sharpens up, the steering gets heavier, you get more throttle response, it's more willing to pin you back in the seat, and the ride gets firmer as well. Now, how does that feel through our corners? We've got a couple of little corners coming up here. Let's see how it goes through here. Look, it does feel bigger and heavier than an internal combustion version of the GV70, but it sort of pins you back in your seat nicely, and it's, I don't know, it's kind of fun to actually throw around here. So you do notice its weight. It is noticeably heavier than an internal combustion GV70, but it's actually pretty impressive. In terms of the all-wheel drive system, it doesn't feel like it's, I don't know, it doesn't feel all that fancy in terms of the way that it's distributing torque. I do feel the wheels slipping a little bit when you sort of punch it out of a corner, but it's actually not bad. It's pretty smile-inducing stuff. Communication through the brake pedal's great. So if you do want to have like a bit of a fang, it really will just communicate everything to you. So yeah, look, it is fun to drive. It's not going to be, I guess, segment leading in terms of its performance. I think something like a Tesla Model Y in performance trim feels more engaging than this, but equally that doesn't come with adaptive damping. So it is going to feel a whole lot more firmer and less luxurious than this does. Now, Genesis quotes a 0 to 100 time of 4.5 seconds in boost mode. This is how it went up against our stopwatch. Let's flick this back to comfort mode. What is it like in terms of road noise? So I did mention this is a private circuit. It's very smooth and it is very quiet on here. But traditionally we have found with GV70 that it is actually pretty quiet in general. There's a lot of padding here to just give you a level of silence inside the cabin that you need. And it is just a nice place to be seated for long distance drives. I would like to run this around our regular drive loop to see how it performs with a little bit more pace in some of those faster corners. But for the most part, this feels great in comfort mode. And I think that if you are doing a lot of city driving, this will feel right at home inside the city. So what's your visibility like? So I keep mentioning this, but because it's based on the GV70, it all feels great. So I've got great visibility down the front of the car there. The wing mirrors are pretty big, so I can see clearly down the sides. You've got a blind spot monitor built into there. And as I mentioned, you're gonna have that camera-based system here when it does finally arrive in Australia. Visibility at the back is good as well. That envelope is pretty decent to see out of. Now, electrified GV70, what do we reckon? Look, I'm a fan of the GV70 in general. What they've done here is taken all the best bits from the GV70 and electrified them. This doesn't really feel like some of the other competitors in this segment that are ICE EV conversions. Some people call them compliance EVs. This doesn't actually feel like one of those. This feels nice and punchy. It handles like a GV70 does. It does feel a little bit heavier, but ultimately, I'm really not too fussed by that. It has excellent charging technology. I think the range could be a little better, especially when you look at some of the competitors in this segment moving up in terms of range. But at this price point, you're getting an ultra luxury product that feels, I guess, just far nicer than some of the other competitors that you're going to be paying more for from German brand names. So yeah, gets my tick of approval. I'm looking forward to driving the GV70 though. That kind of excites me because that is an EV from the ground up and it has all of the cool stuff inside it as well. Now, let me know in the comments section below, have you been looking at a GV70 or an electrified GV70? Keen for your feedback. Let me know what you think of it. What do you think of the design? Are you going to buy one? Let me know down there in the comments section. Now, if you did enjoy this video, please make sure you like it, you share it with your mates, and if you haven't done so already, you subscribe to our channel. We're going to be driving this when it finally launches in Australia, not as a pre-production car, and we will have more to share with you then. But until next time, take it easy.